Welcome to podcast number 9. This is season 1, and I'm really excited about the subject today that I'm going to be sharing with you. So it is all about reduction, zero, and the power of divine timing. And just stay open-minded if you like, Bonnie. Divine timing, what on earth is that? That does not sound very corporate. Just stay with me today. So yeah, there's just this what I've kind of been sitting with just this last week. I've been thinking about the difference between reduction and failure. And yeah, just being at zero and what being at zero, how that's actually a really positive thing to be zeroed out or to have things stripped away or to be in a kind of more a diminished state, and it can sound quite alarming. However, being at zero and being finished is actually, it's a sign that you're about to go into into something new because you've created that space. That's what I want to talk to you about today. So welcome to the podcast. And yeah, thank you. So our culture is very clear about one thing, or at least the culture I'm in. And when I'm on social media or just out and about, this sort of the vibe that I get, because I've been in an extended season of being stripped back of things like things of lesser value and worth, so my own inherent value can come forward, and that I wouldn't stand on any other foundation apart from the foundation of God saying, hey, Bonnie, you're a great daughter. I like you a lot, and that I'm highly valuable and worthy, and that actually I'm a noble daughter, that I kind of carry this nobility. And I say that like with humility, but just this is the kind of the foundation of my confidence and even my business endeavors as I kind of move forward. And so I think that being zeroed out is a fantastic thing. And because in a culture where our value can be measured by our usefulness and profitability. And yeah, and I put a video, it was just a little reel that I had made by a videographer. And when I had to kind of pick some wording for it, and I ended up, because quite often I just make the wording up spontaneously. And so what I heard was that success in heaven looks very different. And this is just playing with this concept that the things that, our culture. So in the West, I live in New Zealand, spend time in Australia, and have friends in the US. They're probably the three. I don't have so many contacts in Europe, but probably just, North America and New Zealand, Australasia kind of area. And our culture, or value, people want to know, what you do. And then from that, they're kind of forming your value or maybe your usefulness to them in their own endeavor. But yeah, if you're producing, earning, building, scaling, and you're doing well, people just that sort of carries this weight to it where that identity can get attached to it. And if you're quiet, slow, or stripped back a bit, you've just had it gone through a season of a bit of paring back, then sometimes people can get uncomfortable with that. And it's quite funny when I've like left New Zealand or, had to go through airports and fill out departure arrival cards. And, while I was in this stripped back, pared back season where God removed titles, parameters that I would usually be, that would kind of contain my life, to kind of give it those boundaries. I didn't really have language about what I did, that I was being reformed and recalibrated. So when I would go in or out of the country, sometimes I would write actress or, mother. I would just kind of pastor, preacher. I would just like make up different things, speaker, because, I like talking. And just playing around with those titles. And actually, it was funny, one year at school for my daughter, when she went to intermediate school, on the enrollment form I wrote, it said occupation of parents, and I wrote down for her father, actor, which he's kind of similar. And then for me, I wrote actress, and she told me that her teacher had actually like Googled us to see if we were famous or anything. But yeah, just it was really just my frustration really at actually I didn't have one of those ordinary titles that I could kind of, you know, be the peg in the round hole. I didn't even have a peg to put in any hole. And yeah, so just being comfortable that actually in a stripped back, pared back season, that it's actually very reformational, that you're being reformed. And some of the most powerful seasons of life actually don't look powerful at all. It could actually look like reduction, or it could look like hiddenness. It could look like quiet, like not a lot going on. And also, it could look like being less useful for a time. So, useful, not youthful. Because when I first had this, somebody actually prayed for me from Bethel. It was during COVID on a Zoom room call with some BSSM students, and they said they didn't know anything about me. I just jumped on one morning and they said, God values you, Bonnie, for, how did they word it? Not for your usefulness, that he just loves me anyway. And so that lesson I had to learn has actually that was like a 3-year lesson. You could just learn that right now here on this podcast today and save a lot of time. That my usefulness did not come into the equation for the love of God and for my relationship. He didn't need me to jump through hoops, prove myself, achieve something, get a title, any of that. It doesn't mean anything. And so that wasn't the foundation for my usefulness. So reduction definitely is not punishment. And there's a phrase that I've loved, that Roland Baker, who is an incredible leader in the body of Christ from America, who planted all these churches in Mozambique, but he's got a whole kind of talk all about let God reduce you, and he's just like laughing during the whole sermon, like he's just carries the joy of the Lord, and he's like getting reduced by God, and then he's just like roaring with laughter. And I really like that. Reduction is a punishment. It's not failure. It's not being erased. And that reduction is actually removal of excess. And we can all have a lot of excess, just stuff that doesn't need to be there. It's actually in the way of our purpose and in the way of, our true north and our true path, of like the big, the most biggest potential of, and when I say biggest potential, again, that's not of like success or something, just potential of nourishment and of your spirit being nourished and living a life that's kind of juicy. And so, yeah, there's a big difference between reduction and collapse. And you may feel like that you actually are going through a collapse when you're being reduced. But if you'll just hold on, reduction will clear space. And so it strips away what no longer fits, and it removes noise, distraction, and false urgency. And sometimes reduction actually looks like zero, because I've always got my ears open for this type of language. I've got my ears open for it, for people who have come through the other side, and then how that's helped form them into the leaders that they are, whether they're a business leader or a faith leader, or somebody who has a voice, who, like in culture, who has influence in what they're saying, where people want to listen. A lot of them have been through a season of reduction. Yes. So when you're going through reduction, it can kind of feel like, actually, I'm just seeing this note here, it can feel like to wait to discover what will happen. No decision will be made until next year, so you'll just have to wait and see. And yeah, so not everyone will get this, but for those who do, and you're walking this out too, I hope you'll be encouraged. And so, yeah, it takes a lot of calming your own like noisy anxiety that's like, what's going to happen, and how will I do that? And you want to enter into the why room, and my mum always said don't go into the why room. And so it takes just to kind of like calm and still yourself like a baby. Sometimes reduction, it looks like zero. So zero output, zero productivity, zero usefulness. And that terrifies us because we've been taught that zero means nothing. But zero isn't nothing. Zero is space. And I just want you to sit with that for a moment, because how many of us are just like, oh, if I could just get the space, if I could just get the time, this kind of like hunger for the space. And that comes from zero. You have to create, the economics of the economy of space is that you need to go through a reduction so that you've got space. And I love the picture, I keep coming back to this image of a bow and arrow. And when the arrow is pulled back, it looks like it's going in the wrong direction. And it looks like loss and it looks like retreat. But that pullback is actually what stores the energy, and it's what gives the arrow the distance. And, it's what gives it that thrust and that direction. So reduction is often the pullback. And then, from the outside, oh gosh, it can look like nothing's happening. And then from the inside, when the archer has got that bow and they've got the sight on from the inside, everything is being aligned. And so that's what reduction feels like, because reduction, it definitely makes people feel uncomfortable, because our whole culture is just based on urgency and this constant frenetic movement, and striving's been normalized, and rushing it's just normal. So making it happen energy is being glorified. And I have been plucked out of that energy and kind of like put on the shelf. That's what God really did for me. And so when someone slows down or goes quiet or stops producing or doesn't have something obvious to point to, it unsettles people. I've even had people, during this process who've gotten angry at me, say, why have you not produced something? And, but I've really been obedient to the season God's had me in. He's just said, Bonnie, hands off, like for way longer than I could have ever imagined. And because it challenges the idea that value actually equals output. Again, my value is not in my output or my usefulness. And what if usefulness is not the same as fruitfulness? And that's the definition that God's been bringing to my own life, and that will define my business moving forward. So what does happen when life strips things back? And there's definitely these seasons where life removes things without asking permission. You're like, hang on a minute, I did not give permission for that to be reduced or that to be cleared out of the way. And I know that people that will be listening to this podcast will be able to listen to, like, the way I'm speaking is almost in, like, I'm a prophetic teacher. So I'm speaking in pictures and ideas and stories, and there's deeper meaning in it. So take what you can from it. And if you're listening to this in like a real right brain, right brain, left brain, like you're more logical, hopefully some of it lands, and you can kind of understand where I'm getting to. But honestly, like, reach out and just say, what do you mean about that? Because I know there'll be something in here that will just really like hit your heart, and you'll think, wow, that really speaks to me. Yeah, so either way, stripping back has a way of revealing truth. And when roles fall away, or when your productivity drops, and then when the structure just dissolves and you're left with questions, that matter, like, oh my goodness, like, who am I without performance? What actually matters now? And then what direction feels true? And what do I even have energy for? Or what brings energy? Because when you've been reduced like that, suddenly you have a choice. You've hopped off the treadmill and you're just looking back at the treadmill and you're like, why do I want to hop back on there? And so you're left with the questions that actually matter, that will bring this vitality and this well-being to you, to your life. And these aren't actually questions, that you can answer from noise. You actually have to be quiet for a second. Which is very frustrating if you're a like go, go, go person. So introducing true north. And this is where I want to introduce the idea that you have a true north. And true north isn't a destination, it's an internal orientation. And it's interesting, even your true north can get a bit clouded or confused with the relationships. Like if you're in relationship with other human beings over, especially if you're an adult, you've been around for a while, then your true north can get just a bit kind of foggy. And I also always think that people, like in romantic relationships should have a true north together. Something, like that needs to be reviewed all the time. But as an individual, you absolutely first, we're in relationship with ourselves first, and then we're in relationship with other human beings, whether it's romantically or, platonically. But our main relationship is our relationship with ourselves. And then obviously if it's being informed by, a relationship with God or, something like that, not something like that with Jesus, that's going to, he's called the light of the world for a reason. So it's good to have a light shining so you can see your true north. And so it's just true north is a place where decisions feel grounded rather than forced, and where clarity comes from alignment, not pressure. So if somebody's pressuring you or you feel some kind of pressure, I'm sorry that that's happening to you. Because true north is where you're no longer actually chasing external demand, but you're responding to an internal truth. So it's almost like you shut off the radio, like if you had the TV on the background, let's pretend I had the TV on, my computer, my phone, it's shutting all of that off and it's going internal to actually hear your true north. So it isn't loud, it doesn't shout, and it definitely doesn't rush. It reveals itself step by step. And you may actually have one of those steps quite often, just like early childhood. I feel like you definitely, as children, we're not cluttered. So quite often some of that reveals itself really early on. I love the verse that says, your word is a lamp for my feet and a light for my path. And a lamp doesn't show you the whole journey. It just shows you the next step. And that's often how alignment works. So the power of hiddenness. Hiddenness is actually, it's always misunderstood, because if you're not in one of those seasons, hiddenness, it's not avoidance. Quite often is God-led, God-directed. It's actually a process that God brings people into. And I actually believe that he does this even for people that don't have a relationship with God, because he is the creator, that people get formed and through a process, especially if they've got some kind of like real destiny calling on their life. And so it's not fear or laziness, but hiddenness is where the orientation happens. It's where the call gets cemented, and it's where you listen, you recalibrate, and it's where you stop reacting, to all the stuff going on, and you start really locking in and discerning. And some of that for me personally has been prayer, worship, reflection, creativity, intuition, talking to God, and all of this needs space for it to marinate and to kind of come forth. And so I heard Peter Crone the other day, is an incredible thought leader, talk about divine timing strategy, DTS. And I've been playing with divine timing strategy or responding to that my whole life. And, we're familiar with hustle strategies or growth strategies, monetization, blah, blah, blah. But, DTS is different. And I've definitely hopped off the train, the ordinary, I can't remember what's the time, Chronos, Logos time. I should have looked that up. But, I'm on a different timeline. And with divine timing strategy, it's not about forcing outcomes. So it's actually about alignment, readiness, and then timing. It all works together. And I've seen this happen in my own life. So DTS doesn't mean passivity. It means being prepared without panic and presenting without pressure. And it's always available if you don't strive. If you get into any of that other energy, it just kills it, really. And obviously it works better if you're in relationship with God and you just have a chat and be like, hey God, what time are we? When does this divine timing happen? So Yeah, leaning into the void. We're not very good with empty space. And when things go quiet, we rush to fill it. We distract, we scroll, and if some people will overwork or they'll manufacture urgency, but the void isn't empty. It's the fertile ground. You want the void. Okay. Look for the void in your life. Just think, well, where is the void? Where can I create more of it? It's where new ideas form. It's where creativity emerges. That's where clarity returns. And yeah, it's just so crazy when you think about how little space we allow in our life for something unplanned, for the divine timing strategy. Like when you think of your year, is there something in your year positive that could be a carved out void for something wonderful to fill it? Because quite often we don't have those spaces carved out because really we don't trust that there could be something good that would happen. So we fill it up, with the same old, even, which is actually such a shame because you miss out. I just want to share this because I feel like it just perfectly ties in and I think it matters. So over the last few months, I've actually intentionally created a lot of space in my life. And I've actually let go of a home that I've been living in for 2 years. It's a really cool mid-century house. And I no longer live there. I've released a lot of physical possessions. And because I felt like they had old energy, I've come through a 7 or 8 year cycle. Just felt like actually it was time to kind of draw a line in the sand and cut some of that old away and create the void. That might sound extreme to some people, and maybe you're not ready for that. But for me, it wasn't about loss. I was actually just creating an intentional blank page. And what surprised me is that with just like the clarity that I've actually had that's beginning to emerge from that reduction without all the noise, without the maintenance, or without all the shoulds, I've kind of made that decision and cut that away. And so the reduction has actually allowed me to see more clearly what actually matters in this next season and how I can move into it, how I can lean and fill in some of those spaces. And I'm being incredibly not jealous, I'm protective of that void because reduction reveals alignment and convergence because now there's space. And they would say, like, make space for God. And so just like how little activity actually moves the needle, because, we're always told that constant activity is what creates change. Or, I used to be in sales and for many years, and, make 1,000 prospecting phone calls and have a big pipeline. And, it was just like about this mega momentum. And if I did the mega momentum here, out the other end, pop, I would get a result. But it would need to have that huge amount of momentum at one end. And so I've been thinking about, especially of that divine timing, how little activity can move the needle when it's in alignment, divergence, and it's intentional. And so, when you look closely, and this is what I've studied, I'm an avid reader, I love reading books, and I go to the library. Like right now, my computer's propped up upon 4 books: Make Life Beautiful, The Sound of the Future. That's actually a really good book. Scandinavian Year and Insight Venice. Like, I read a lot, all kinds of different books. When you look closely, many lives pivot not through volume, but through timing. And so it's like one conversation, one meeting, one relationship, and then everything shifts and changes. And I feel like I've actually had words about this, that I would actually say things that I would just say one word and that it would shift somebody's entire destiny in life. Do you know what I mean? Like, with God. So there's countless examples of this, but people who spent years preparing quietly and then one moment shifted everything. Not because they forced it, but because they were ready. Sometimes it's not about doing more. It's actually about being ready for the right moment. So divine timing versus make it happen energy. And make it happen energy feels frantic, anxious, and urgent. So I was watching Times Square on a TV program last night, and people pay to have promote their book or promote themselves in Times Square. And I've actually looked it up before. It's like $15,000 US, and that you'll be up there. I don't know how long you get to be on the screen for, and then people will take a selfie and they're like, I was in Times Square. That is make it happen energy. Okay, it's frantic in Times Square. It was just crazy. There was millions of people, and then all the advertising, and it was just anxious and urgent, and some people might find it exciting. It was self-promoting, where divine timing feels steady. It's hidden and it's quiet and it's intentional, and then boop, something happens. It doesn't mean nothing is happening. It just means the right things are happening, quite often beneath the surface, and then it happens. It's like the sun coming up at dawn. It doesn't look like much is happening. There's a little ray of light, rather than in the nightclub with the pumping music at midnight, which is that frantic kind of promoting energy. And so this type of thinking is actually how I would approach everything. But I've had somebody who actually asked this week if I would, they were like, you should be a matchmaker, Bonnie. You should help people, match up in romantic love kind of thing. But it's the same thing. I have never been on a dating app. I never would. It'll be just like one person turns up in my lounge and then I date them. That's actually how I got my last boyfriend. So, it's just one meeting, one conversation. It's like all my previous jobs, I went for one interview and then I got the job. I've never been somebody who's just like scattergunned, like the machine gun and pulling the trigger to try and make it happen. So you're not behind if things have been stripped back, slowed down, or simplified. And it can feel like a massive loss, but you're probably coming into alignment. So the question isn't why am I here, but what is being prepared? What is being prepared in my heart for my business? Because I'm interested in a foundational business built on God and spiritual principles, that's authentic and not self-promoted, something that's just kind of like hustly. And so I've actually wanted to invite you to my very first school, Spark Joy School. Kind of seems fun just running a school. So if you're in a season like this, you're reorientating, listening, reconnecting with clarity and creativity, you're interested in business, or maybe you just are interested in making new ways to bring your creativity through, plant something that could produce money or income or something like that. That's exactly who Spark Joy School is for. It's a 4-week personal development teaching space focused on inner authority, self-trust, clarity and discernment, creativity and direction, reconnecting with your gifts, talents, skills, ability, and then learning how to make all those unique gifts and offerings that you have work practically, especially online. And so I'll be teaching from the Spark Joy method, and I'm also going to include my Lady Liberty teaching complimentary for anyone who hasn't already done it, because that's identity and internal freedom work is foundational. It's really training you to think like a leader. Think of it as like a mini leadership school. And so I am a believer. I will, be referencing to God because that would be natural. That's who I am. But this is not a religious school or anything. And it's grounded, thoughtful, and accessible. And it runs for 4 weeks. It's $100. And if you feel like the right next step for you, you're very welcome to reach out to me directly and I'll share the details. So I'm very excited for you. If you're being reduced, that's not the end of the story. It's like really exciting. And often it's just the moment of direction. It's becoming clear. So you don't have to prove your worth and you don't have to rush your way forward. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is actually stop performing and just return to your true north. So before I finish today, I just want to thank you for coming along and listening to this today. And also, I've been noticing what people have been reaching out to me on. And the other thing is questions around faith, identity, beauty, and what it looks like to live fully as a woman without shutting down your feminine, or just being like in the fullness of your beauty. And so if this episode has resonated, I've actually recently opened up a small number of private one-on-one sessions in the faith, beauty, and life integration sessions. I've got the spirit of counsel, but they're spacious, thoughtful conversations for women who are navigating transition, visibility, or a sense that something new is forming and who want clarity. And so if that sounds like you, you're very welcome to reach out to me. You send me a message and I'll send the details across and we can get that on the calendar. So yes, I would love to walk alongside you and help you with that. So those sessions are $350. Reach out to me. Thank you so much for the session today. I'm Bonnie Brown, your host from the Spark Joy method. See you later.